Okay, so what exactly is beer? Well, it's an alcoholic drink made from fermented grains and/or cereals. The earliest records of beer date back 10,000 years to ancient Mesopotamia. They even had their own goddess of brewing called Ninkasi. The original ingredients for beer were water, grains, and naturally occurring yeast to allow the fermentation. This beer that they brewed would be very unlike the beers of today. Around 2000 BC, the Egyptians had developed over 20 different types of beer, and they even exported it to different countries. The Romans and Greeks favoured wine over beer, but still they developed the same process. In 800 BC, beer arrived in Germany. Modern brewing, as we know it today, started to emerge with the introduction of hops in the 12th century. So this was introduced in the 15th century in the UK. The beers that we have today are made up from water, malted barley, hops and yeast. Any slight variation on the brewing technique can produce a totally different style and a totally different beer with different tastes. The beer family is huge, but there are four main types of beer produced today: ales, stouts, porters, and lager, which means to be stored at a colder temperature. Okay, so we'll talk about ales first. Ales are commonly called real ales or cask conditioned ales, and nowadays you'll often hear them called craft beers as well. Now, beer has a second fermentation which takes place in the cask, which helps to build up CO2. It's really important that real ale is handled carefully, otherwise the drink can be ruined. Beer, the standard beer, is produced in brewery conditioned kegs. The yeast is filtered off from the beer to prevent a second fermentation, and then the CO2 levels are adjusted to keep it stable. The beer is also pasteurized and then packaged for sale in kegs, cans and bottles. Stout. Stouts are normally dark, full-bodied and rich beer. The colour and the flavour are obtained from dark roasted barley, and I'm sure you'll all have heard of the famous Irish version of stout. Finally, porter. Now, porter is a very dark and strong malty beer. It's sometimes made from blending different beers together, and it can sometimes be aged up to 1 year before served. It's quite uncommon, porter, now. You don't find it in many places. Then we have lager, and lager makes up for over half of all beer sales. It's matured over 1 to 2 weeks in cold storage to help keep it in prime condition. It's also brewery conditioned and then racked in kegs.